Welcome, everyone. We'll be starting in just a moment. Welcome to our webinar. We'll be starting in just a moment. We'll be starting in just a moment. Okay, it looks like a fair amount of people are populated. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Heather Zemo. I'm the Education Director at IAHSS. First of all, I want to say happy Healthcare Security and Safety Week. And I also want to say thank you to Centegix for sponsoring it. Our webinar today is titled Global Strategies for Preventing Workplace Violence. Feel free to use the chat feature to introduce yourself. We should have time at the end of the webinar for questions. So you can use the Q&A option on the bottom of your Zoom screen to submit your questions. Please don't put your questions in the chat. They will probably get lost. We prefer the Q&A option. This webinar is being recorded, and a PDF of the slides will also be available in the IAHSS store. Now I'd like to introduce our sponsor, Andrea Greco. Welcome, Andrea.
Hi, thank you for having me, and thank you for everyone being here to celebrate Healthcare Security and Safety Week with us by joining today's webinar. And really thanks for all the work that you do all year round to protect patients, visitors, staff, really the entire healthcare community. I've seen a number of posts this week across social media channels celebrating the work that you do, and hope that you feel recognized and celebrated, especially since today is Security and Safety Officer Day. As Heather mentioned, my name is Andrea Greco, and I lead the healthcare practice efforts at Centegix. For those of you that don't know that much about us, we are a leader in wearable safety technology, and we're honored to sponsor this week in today's webinar as well. So at Centegix, we innovate to empower and protect people every day. So in an emergency, we know that time is the most critical factor for a positive outcome. Crisis Alert, our wearable staff duress button, enables healthcare workers to discreetly summon help in an emergency anywhere on your campus, inside and out, to facilitate the fastest response time. So this technology helps staff feel safer, more supported, allowing them to focus on caring for patients. Crisis Alert is just one part of the cloud-based Centegix safety platform that also includes digital mapping, precise locating capabilities, and a visitor management solution. So leaders in over 15,000 locations across the country trust us to empower and protect their people every day. So today, though, we're going to focus on preventing or global strategies for preventing workplace violence. And to do that, we have three impactful leaders that will be sharing their expertise with us. Laura Smith is a dual qualified occupational therapist and registered mental health nurse with over 20 years of experience across the UK National Health Service and independent healthcare providers. She's currently the professional nurse specialist for reducing restrictive practice, where she leads programs that reduce aggression and restrictive interventions while improving staff well-being. Previously, as a clinical violence prevention specialist, she developed and implemented data-driven approaches to violence reduction, blending frontline practice, quality improvement, and compassionate leadership. Her work in this area was recognized with the 2023 National Healthcare Security Award for Violence Reduction Initiative. Laura's career spans community and acute care, ambulance services, and mental health inpatient, crisis, and community pathways, giving her a system-wide perspective on how safety, quality, and patient experience intersect. She is a trauma risk management practitioner and a strong advocate for trauma-informed practice, ensuring physical, psychological, and emotional safety are embedded in policy, training, and daily routines. She's an active member of the International Association for Healthcare Security and Safety, serving as chair of the UK chapter, and collaborates across clinical, security, and operational teams to translate evidence into practical, sustainable change. Laura is passionate about creating environments where patients can recover and staff can thrive. Matt Hilderman has worked in healthcare security in British Columbia, Canada since 2003. He currently serves as the Manager of Training and Compliance for Vancouver Coastal Health Protection Services, where he leads the threat assessment and management and the use of force investigation programs. Over his 22-year career, Matt has held diverse operations portfolios, including the Forensic Psychiatric Hospital and clinics in British Columbia, and contributed to numerous multidisciplinary consultations for clinical teams focused on safely providing physical care for patients at high risk of violent behavior. Matt is a certified master instructor in advanced team response, the Provincial Violence Prevention Curriculum, and a certified instructor in Wing Tsun and Wu Tao traditional Kung Fu systems. A past master instructor with the Crisis Prevention Institute and the Pressure Point Control Tactics System. He's also served as a certified instructor for security arrest and control tactics with the Justice Institute of British Columbia. Melissa Jones is the Director of Workplace Violence Prevention Programs for Children's Health in Dallas, Texas, and formerly the Workplace Violence Director for Inspire Health of South Jersey. She's responsible for developing, directing, and executing strategies, programs, and actions designed to promote workplace violence prevention, early intervention, and mitigation, utilizing a multidisciplinary and integrated team approach to meet accreditation standards, prevent harm, and promote overall safety and wellness throughout the healthcare network. Over the last 7 years, the comprehensive workplace violence program Melissa developed in 2018 at Bay Health Medical in Dover, Delaware, has shown proven success in meeting designated outcome measures and a decrease in overall assault on staff rates. Melissa is a certified healthcare protection administrator, human services board certified practitioner, certified emergency manager, and certified alcohol and drug counselor with a master's in administration of human services and a master's in administration of criminal justice. She is an active member of the International Association of Healthcare Safety and Security, Association of Threat Professionals, ACES International, and the American College of Healthcare Executives. So please welcome our 3 panelists today, and let's start our webinar.
Thank you very much, Andrea. So let's take a journey around the world. We do have some objectives, which we won't go into in detail, but basically our aim today is that different countries approach and experience workplace violence in different ways, shaped by our own systems, cultures, and our legislation. So let's look at what's happening in the UK, Canada, and the US and beyond, so we can all pick up proven strategies and adapt them to our context so we can build stronger and more resilient programs together. So let's begin in the UK, the land of tea, rain, and a healthcare system that doesn't require a second mortgage. So the UK's National Health Service was launched in 1948. It remains the nation's crown jewel, where we provide comprehensive healthcare to the entire population, funded purely through taxation. So it's designed to ensure that everyone, regardless of financial circumstances, accesses both preventative care and treatment without any charges at the point of use. So healthcare in the UK has devolved, which means England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland each have their own healthcare system. So today I'll focus on NHS England, the largest of the 3 systems. NHS England is responsible for setting the vision, allocating funding, and commissioning services, and they also oversee the local delivery of services. From major hospitals to GP surgeries, they operate at an arm's length from our government, and they are about to merge with the Department of Health and Social Care so that strategic functions are brought closer together. So across the healthcare in the UK, they're delivered in a range of settings, from frontline services in A&E departments, operating theatres, specialist services, fast-paced, high-risk environments, often run by NHS trusts and not independent providers. Here you do find a security presence, traditional, either in-house or contracted out. Officers manage incidents, aggression, and protection of people and property and work closely with our clinical teams. In smaller hospitals, these roles are combined with portering or reception duties, so they require officers to have flexibility and adaptability. Our community health services include district nursing services, general practice, health visitors, where there's a focus on prevention and early intervention, but there is no on-site security, and safety relies solely on staff training, risk assessments, and lone worker technology, so that help can be summoned if needed. The emphasis here is on situational awareness, planning, and preventative strategies, with support offered retrospectively if an incident occurs. Our mental health services and learning disability services are the high needs but low visibility settings. So these span everything from anxiety to complex trauma to psychosis. They are delivered in hospitals, community centres, or patients' homes. And incidents of violence and aggression here are very frequent, but dedicated security is incredibly rare. Clinical staff are trained to manage violence and aggression using a trauma-informed approach focused on de-escalation and calming environments. Physical restraint is a last resort, tightly regulated by our law and human rights frameworks, but nurses will respond to these incidents. So a significant number of independent providers will deliver specific care, but they are also regulated under the same framework. So there is a period of NHS reform ongoing. It was announced in March that there is going to be an abolishment of NHS England, which is a standalone body. So at the moment, there's uncertainty about the NHS. The values remain of fairness, dignity, and free care. But our responsibility at the moment is about protecting these whilst we're strengthening safety, security, and patient experience. It's quite a tricky time. So we have the Violence Prevention and Reduction Standard, which has come from NHS England. This aims to protect staff from abuse and aggression whilst promoting a culture of respect, safety, and support, which moves beyond ad hoc measures to ensuring safety and consistency across the whole health system. It's a national evidence-based framework that's embedded in current practice so that the violence prevention and reduction isn't dependent on a local variation in resources or practice. It starts with leadership, where we need board level oversight, the identified designated lead who's responsible for the implementation, and it ensures that this is embedded within the organisational strategy rather than as a peripheral issue. Every organisation has to have a violence prevention and reduction strategy, which is structured and evidence informed and has to have very clear aspirations, which include local assessments to identify our hotspots. It covers targeted risk interventions such as staff training, environmental design, better lighting, integration with existing clinical governance and workforce plans, the support for victims when incidents do occur, because unfortunately they still do. So staff must receive appropriate and consistent support. And the standard requires clear reporting pathways to ensure that incidents are logged, psychological support through counselling or occupational health, which requests a real significant shift from previous approaches, where the expectation was that staff would just get on with it. Staff are now required to have mandatory training in de-escalation, conflict resolution, and personal safety. And alongside this, there's a strong focus on the positive reporting culture, where staff need to speak up about incidents without fear of reprisal, dismissal, or being labelled as difficult. So this incident is required nationally, and it's identified that this isn't an NHS or healthcare issue in isolation, and it promotes multi-agency collaboration with police, social care, safeguarding teams, and other relevant parties, reflecting the reality that violence prevention is a whole system challenge and requires a coordinated and multi-system response rather than isolated interventions. And crucially, the guidance embeds the principles of trauma-informed care, recognising that incidents of violence and aggression stem from distress, unmet needs, or crisis situations. And many individuals who are presenting with aggression are carrying invisible burdens, trauma histories, distress, exclusion, adverse life experiences. And by understanding the context and responding with empathy rather than judgment, staff have been able to de-escalate tensions and build safer therapeutic relationships. Physical environments also matter, and the NHS Design Council is a national organisation that emphasises enabling environments and developing calming, welcoming spaces designed to reduce triggers and support recovery. So prevention isn't a single intervention, it's a combination of language, environment, strategy and mindset. So the NHS staff survey is one of the largest surveys in the world, introduced in December 2020. In 2003. This survey covers everybody working in NHS healthcare services. Last year, over 700,000 people responded. This year, the survey went live last month. So this survey provides us with data. It gives us information about what is happening at a local level. It shows us what the experience of staff are, and it helps us understand how we can then predict and move forward. So 27.8% of staff said they'd experienced violence and aggression, and sadly 19.8% of staff had experienced it from their own colleagues. And it also highlighted real inequalities. From ethnic minority backgrounds and those with disabilities, there's been a significantly higher rate of abuse, particularly from colleagues, which really shows what the workplace culture is like. Discrimination from patients of the public has also reached a 5-year high, with ethnicity being the most frequently cited. And it also shows that our ambulance service is really a sector in crisis. 40% of ambulance staff reported physical violence from patients, relatives or the public, which is 3 times the NHS average. There have been 27% of sexual harassment from the public, and 9% of this was from their colleagues. And harassment from managers was also disproportionately high. So this survey isn't just a data set for us, it's the collective voice of those of our staff who are keeping the system running. And the challenge is trying to change some of this staff information into national improvement. So I won't bore you with the legal framework that the UK works in. We will get into the weeds here, but there is a really strong reporting framework and the need to provide scrutiny to every use of force that happens. So the core principle is dignity, necessity, and doing the least harm possible are the main concerns. So the idea has been that preventing violence and aggression in healthcare isn't about reacting. It's about understanding the causes and acting early. So the Violence Prevention and Reduction Standard asks us to look at things through a prevention lens and a trauma-informed manner. What's driving the behaviour? And so this is about, instead of asking what's wrong with you, it's about asking what's happened to you and what do you need right now. This is aimed to create more compassionate, respectful spaces and reduce the risk of violence and abuse. So the thought here is mindset drives behaviour, and changing mindset can change culture, with the environments we work in mattering. With calm space can help prevent incidents before they begin. So the UK has moved towards a restraint reduction model. So the Use of Force Act and previous legislation has led to the development of restraint reduction roles. So they're named people working in NHS and independent hospitals, tasked with reducing the use of restraint and restrictive practice with the view that these will then reduce workplace violence and aggression. These individuals are senior clinicians accountable for embedding change, supporting teams and leading the reduction of restraint and seclusion through the use of evidence-based strategies and cultural transformation. So one of these frameworks that's most adopted in the UK is the Safe Wards model, which is evidence-based and focuses on using the reduction of conflict and containment. So it's more not about reducing or removing risk, it's about working smarter to reduce the conditions that lead to incidents in the first place. So it focuses on de-escalation and early intervention, with the thought that the earlier that we spot the signs, the less situations are likely to escalate. And it's like noticing the small spark before it becomes a fire. So communication and consistency with mixed messages between staff and patients, and doing the best laid plans. Patients noticing consistency quickly, really quickly. Positive relationships between staff and patients. So this is at the heart. Trust, connection and human relationships. When patients feel heard and understood, conflict reduces. And the outcomes speak for themselves with this. We've had lower restraints nationally of restraint and seclusion. We've had calm awards and improved experiences. We've got more confident staff who are beginning to feel less stressed, safer and less burnt out, and patient experience has increased. So restraint reduction hasn't been about just ticking boxes in the UK and meeting targets. It's been about culture, relationships, and everyday actions that make our wards safer, calmer, and more compassionate places to be. So now let's talk about what happens after the incident. This has been the crucial space where we can either learn and heal or move on too quickly and miss the opportunity. So we've had a really strong emphasis on robust debriefing after every incident or hands-on restraint. And by robust, we don't mean, is everybody okay? This is a structured, trauma-informed, reflective conversation where staff are given a space to process what's happened. It's about emotional processing, team learning, and then building safer systems. We've got peer support and swatch rounds and wellbeing hubs, because it doesn't just stop at debriefing. These spaces help to then normalise conversations about the difficult parts of the job. It strengthens team relationships and reduces isolation. Staff in healthcare are often exposed to trauma, and secondary trauma is real. So too often the focus is solely on patients' trauma, with the impact on staff going unrecognised. So trauma-informed support acknowledges the experiences and helps staff feel safer, supported, and able to continue. And patient debriefing is also a critical tool. It captures the patient's voice and experience after an incident and helps us transform our learning and our understanding. So we can work in partnership, understand what it felt like for them and what we can learn together to shift the approach from doing things to them to doing things with them and creating their own care plans. So this learning doesn't just go into meeting minutes or a debrief form, it goes into patient care plans so that future responses are actively adapted. So if something didn't work, we'll change it. If something did, let's build on it. And it's about a living learning process rather than a tick box exercise. And all of this is directly linked to preventing burnout, compassion fatigue, and ethical drift. So when staff aren't supported, cracks form. And over time, this leads to disengagement or a shift in values, whereas robust support and debriefing are front-line defences against some of that drift. So what does all this actually mean? And what challenges are we still facing? In the UK, services have embedded trauma-informed approaches alongside frameworks such as safe wards and debriefing, and there have been tangible and recordable reductions in workplace violence, restraint and seclusion. It's not just anecdotal. Our nationally reported data does show these trends. But it's also about those stronger staff and patient relationships. And the power lies in the culture change and consistent practice, not in a single shiny intervention. When staff have been increased with confidence with the right tools, models and support, confidence grows, and confident staff de-escalate earlier, communicate more effectively and create psychologically safer spaces. So it's about giving somebody a good sat-nav. They still have to drive, but at least they're not consistently lost at every roundabout. The confidence is particularly important in high-stress environments where uncertainty can quickly tip into reactive and restrictive practice. So we've also been a testing ground for innovation, sometimes out of necessity, but also sometimes out of opportunity. So some of our current projects have involved technology, environmental design, using data to support early intervention, staff wellbeing programs. But of course, it's not all smooth sailing. We do still have major challenges, and workplace violence is still increasing in severity. Cultural change takes time, and anybody who's tried to shift a deeply embedded culture knows that it's really a marathon and not a sprint. And often it's uphill in the rain. So security presence is also inconsistent. Some of our hospitals have well-established integrated clinical security teams, while others have no provision, leaving clinical staff to manage risk alone, which makes it really difficult to maintain a standard approach to safety and security. So the work to reduce restraint and seclusion is a broader effort to reduce workplace violence, and embedding trauma-informed approaches strengthens communication, staff wellbeing, and improving patient experience. So we've seen the challenges here in the UK, but we're not just working in isolation. One of our greatest strengths is being part of the IHSS and learning from each other. So on that note, I'm delighted to hand over to Matt from Canada, who will share his perspective, strategies and lessons from the Canadian context.
Well, thank you so much, Laura. It's really heartwarming to hear an ally speak out there about dealing with such a difficult issue in providing care to patients. It's a complex issue, and I'll introduce a little bit of our situation in Canada here and then talk about our journey with this and share some of our experiences. So, in British Columbia here, we have a Ministry of Health that oversees several health authorities. There's two kinds of health authorities. There are regional health authorities which operate acute care and community care facilities within their geographical regions. And then there is also a provincial health authority that oversees specialized care services. Forensic psychiatric care is one example. Our emergency medical technician services is another, and our specialized women and children's hospital and associated clinics is another. We've had several milestone events here in BC that have shaped our structure and responses to workplace violence. In 2003, we had an active shooter in a rural hospital, which led to the creation of an integrated protection services program here. And the reasoning behind that was in investigating the incident afterwards, it was quite clear that several parties had pieces of information about the threat and risk that was presented, but there was no sharing. Everybody was operating in silos. So there was a lot of work. There has been a lot of work over the last 22 years to bring everybody together and ensure that we have a robust threat assessment and management program in place here. I'll talk a little bit about my journey with healthcare security services. I came into the industry with a deep background in physical intervention skills. It has always been a passion for me. My dad sometimes tells people stories about how I was a kid in diapers watching the old Kung Fu series with David Carradine, and I would imitate the movements on the screen. I got into training as soon as I could. And had over the years the benefit of training with some very experienced military and law enforcement professionals who had combat experience. So it gave me a particular perspective walking into a healthcare environment, learning about how we use physical direction to facilitate providing care with patients under a least restraint policy and a need for trauma-informed approaches. Uh, and it is a very different perspective. And on the clinical side here, you've got a real focus on facilitating a therapeutic journey here for a patient. When we look at working with patients who are having a behavioral emergency and require a complex care response that involves physical intervention, we focus on using biomechanics and balance displacement, which is markedly different than where I came from in a law enforcement environment where we focus on situational control, ensuring public safety, and we will often use pain compliance as a first stop. The focus here in a law enforcement environment is to minimize harm to the subject, whereas in a clinical environment, it's safe and non-harmful. And over the years, I've seen a lot of attempts to bring law enforcement and combat veterans into the environment to share knowledge. But it really is a very foreign a foreign professional goal set to these folks who want to fall back on tools they know that work in controlling a situation. So taking the lessons learned and developing approaches that are safe and non-harmful, and even in some cases may facilitate a therapeutic relationship has been a lot of my work over the last 23 years. And I'm very passionate about this. I've had some real life-changing experiences in working with people in care. One of the experiences that I'll share briefly was dealing with a patient barricaded in a washroom that was very high risk. And we had to move into the room, and she was assaultive. She was very tough to manage, but I'm comfortable now with managing movement in my space and redirecting movement. I allowed opportunities for my team to engage. We call it a connect, cushion, contain process, and that cushioning piece is really an important concept for us in terms of wrapping a person up and helping them feel secure. This lady tried to bite and spit, and the whole time this was going on, I kept telling her, "We're not here to hurt you. We're not here to hurt you. You're okay. You're okay." And there was a moment there where we were struggling, where she just trusted us. She relaxed completely into our care, and we were able to guide her where we needed to go. And that marrying of physical skills and verbal intervention skills for me has been a real series of milestone experiences in my journey. I think there's a yeah, it's a complex moment to bring in physical skills and put hands on a patient when you're trying to provide care, but it can be done in a kind way. You can be kind and you can be strong at the same time, and I don't think a lot of people understand that. But there are real teachable moments here in providing care that are possible. Um, so to give you a bit of a perspective here on this journey here, before 2010 in BC here, we used the nonviolent, we used a few different products. Nonviolent crisis intervention was one of them. Management of aggressive behavior was another one. I think Women and Children's use a program called MANT, which I'm not as familiar with. And around 2008, 2009, we had a committee form that was made up of all the employers, all the health authorities, and all the unions representing nurses, unions representing healthcare workers, and others, all came to the table to talk about violence prevention training in British Columbia and develop something that was specific to our needs. And a lot of wonderful work was done by those folks. We had some real experts at the table with a deep background in clinical care. I was asked to participate as a consultant on physical intervention methods in a clinical intervention. And the heaviest part of my work was with the advanced team response piece. How do you get people working together and intervening both with verbal skills and with physical skills at the same time? I'll move on to the next screen here. There we go. So 15 years later, what have we learned? We've learned that early interventions work. So the sooner you get in with a verbal de-escalation strategy, the better. Trauma-informed approaches are critical. People who are expressing themselves through violent or aggressive behavior are communicating something, and hearing that message and being able to respond to it safely and address it safely is a very important part of a successful care program. We've learned that touch is a very powerful communication, and that goes both ways. People who reach out in violence and aggression are reaching out with a communication, and I think it's very important that we hear and understand what it is that they're trying to express. Many people in our care have learned to use violence as a tool to get what they need. They've learned this as children. They've been taught this by adults around them, and under very traumatic circumstances. And there's a lot of healing that needs to occur. And there is opportunities in some cases to teach a better pathway for behavior, and that's important. Some of the problems we've run into is that utilizing verbal de-escalation strategies is challenging when a fight or flight response starts to kick in. So once the primitive part of the brain starts to drive the sympathetic nervous system into activating here, you actually start using a different part of the brain, and it becomes more difficult to communicate. So some of those more sophisticated verbal de-escalation strategies get lost, and that's where situations fumble. So self-management in crisis is a really important part of the training that we do. And some of that involves, I guess, a form of exposure therapy. It's can we create situations in training where we drive up stress and anxiety in a safe space where people can start to explore developing those verbal the intervention strategies and practice the skills. We found that 8 hours or one day of training is insufficient to really properly equip people with the response skills that they need. And one of the things we often find that is absent is realism in training. And realism is you have to introduce it very, very carefully. One of the things I've learned over the many years that I've been teaching physical skills is you really have to dial it up. And that means starting with very low-key static exercises and then moving into more dynamic exercises that involve more movement and a little bit of an introduction of stress and anxiety into the situation there in order to start to shape safe and appropriate responses to dealing with an emotional crisis or a behavioral emergency. So we focus on really training that is based on operant classical conditioning. We're looking to build some basic skills, right? I like to use the example of tying your shoelaces, right? Once you learn how to tie your shoelaces, you don't think about it. You put your shoes on in the morning and you're confident walking out the door that you're not going to trip and fall and stumble and all of those kind of things. There's a set of essential skills that you need if you're going to work in with people who may carry a low to high risk of impulse control or aggressive behavior. So what I learned in Wing Chun Kung Fu thoroughly is stimuli and response drills. So this is all touch drills, and it is working inside someone's physical space and learning to manage hands within your environment. And that led me to a very, very comfortable space. Once I understood once I had developed some of these skills and I was confident in dealing with people moving into my space, then it actually helped me to relax a little bit and just really explore what was bothering the person. And use those verbal intervention strategies that were so successful over time. And for me, that was a beautiful thing. Once I was confident, I felt safe. I knew how to handle aggression in my space, and how to handle intimidation when I felt it. I really was able to have some meaningful connections with people and redirect them into safe spaces. It does require repetitive physical practice. You need to drill this in the body until it becomes a reflex to it. Now there are some positive notes in this. Nobody needs to become a martial arts master by any means. I think these basic skills don't take a long time to drill, but it does take some consistency to it. An 8-hour day doesn't quite meet the need because people don't have follow-up practice to it. So I'm a big fan of a book by a fellow named Josh Kaufman, who wrote a book called The First 20 Hours: Mastering the Toughest Part of Learning Anything. And he said people get good at things with a little bit of practice. So the graph I have there is something I took off his TED Talk presentation there because I thought that demonstrated it well. We're not looking for people to master skills. We're looking at people to develop a basic set of safety skills. And there's a fair bit of research to demonstrate that it really only takes 20 hours broken up into small 45-minute practice sessions. And that's where we're focusing our training now. I've got a note here about understanding resistance versus assaultive behavior. There is some knowledge pieces to this that really help us to be informed and structure what we cover in those 20 hours. Understanding that most of the physical moments you will have with people will be resistance, where they're moving away from you or pulling away from you, and that requires a certain type of management skills versus assaultive behavior. And part of the problem is we don't know when someone will move from resistive to assaultive behavior, or we may not know what triggers that. But we do know there are some common high risk behaviors, and that helps us to really focus what it is that we're teaching people. And we cover three common high risk behaviors. One is the simple fact that people who are being assaultive or aggressive, they will often use what they're most used to working with. It's their dominant hand. People use hands before they use legs, and they use legs most often before they will use a tertiary weapon like the head butting, spitting, that kind of thing. So we work with people to manage hands, focusing on a particular kind of common circular movement that people make. And we've designed touch drills around that. So they're experiencing touch in a safe, consensual way. And when they feel the touch, they are responding appropriately as well, and learning how to deal with that. Whether it's from a low risk to a high risk. So if you have a patient that's touchy and they're touching you, how can you do that kindly and softly and gently? And if they're responding quicker and a bit more aggressively, how do we do that? So we talk a lot about setting people up for success. And one of the things, probably the most important lesson for me in working with clinical staff and security staff who are going to be dealing with people who are at risk, is teaching them that their body will block for them. Nobody really needs to learn how to block. You can learn how to block better. But I like to use the analogy of looking for your keys at home, if anybody's had that experience. If you live with a partner or a roommate, and you're looking for your keys, I can't find my keys. You may have had that experience where they say, "Found your keys, heads up," and you look up and all of a sudden there's a set of keys flying at you. And the first thing your body will do is actually move to deflect or catch the keys. You don't have to think about that. It's a process called the hijacking of the amygdala. The brainstem takes over your body to protect you. So setting yourself up for success means that while you're dealing with someone, and it's like tying your shoelaces, it's just a habit everybody should make when working with people in care, is keep your hands up and in between yourself and the person that you're dealing with. I like to talk with my hands. That's how I do it. I have positions like the thinker where I can stand very comfortably in dialogue with people, and it looks very calming, and I give the impression that I'm listening. But for me, this is me getting ready in case something physical happens, while facilitating a really caring and therapeutic interaction with the person. So managing touch in your space, learning about positioning, learning to breathe through the moment, because breathing is one of the things that brings the anxiety down in a moment and starts to make the forefront of your brain that does verbal interaction much better than the back of your brain is really important. Learning to control exits and make sure that you've got a way out. And keeping your back, not moving to expose a part of your body to another person. Once you've developed those skills, like tying your shoelaces, you don't think about it anymore. And working in the forensic system, you certainly saw clinical staff and security staff there had really developed, many of them had developed a really good skill set. And I can't stress this enough, where I have seen incidents of violence and harm to our staff, it's over these basic tools. It's turning your back at an inappropriate moment. It's not being aware of who's around you. It's having your hands down behind your side or in your pockets. I saw a nurse the other day with her hands behind her back talking to a patient who was agitated. I mean, these are natural things to do, and people do them often, but it's those skills that we need to work on. And I like to think of those 20 hours as really inoculating staff. Once you drill the skills in, it becomes a habit. You don't have to think about it anymore. You can really focus on care, and you can really focus on the patient. Trying to limit my time here. All right, so I made this comment already about inoculating, and once a person feels safe, they can really focus on de-escalation. Um, so I have this note here about ears. I call this essential aggression response skills. Right. So once you've mastered your aggression, your essential aggression response skills, you really can focus on listenings. Right. So engage the skills, listen with your ears is the tagline that I like to use here. There is a problem with facilitation. What we have found here in British Columbia is that it's very difficult to find facilitators and almost impossible to find facilitators who have the technical knowledge around how the body works, how to set it up for success, and if you do need to physically redirect someone, how you can do that in a safe and caring but also effective way. Um, so those sort of what I hesitate to use the phrase, but those combat tested techniques are really really important. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of people at the helm here who are well experienced in that. So it's kind of hit or miss. Um, Facilitation requires people who have technical knowledge, practical experience. It needs to be a multidisciplinary approach, but it really needs to be led by people who do the work with those verbal and physical interventions. So recognizing champions in your community who have a documented history of doing this well is important. Um, yeah, I have some other notes here. I think I've really used up my time here, so I'm going to flip to this last screen here. I really believe in open source solutions. It's there's a number of systems out there. Whatever system you choose, I think they'll give you a basic starting point. It's really the drilling and the work after that becomes a part of that. So my open source offering here is a program that we run here that we call the Healthcare Environment Aggression Response Training. We do the provincial program, and we teach everybody the provincial program, but we do a lot of follow-up work on that with specialized areas. How do we manage somebody onto a bed? How do we manage seclusion room safety? And a bunch of other pieces. The ears piece I mentioned already, focusing on essential aggression response skills. And when we're working with the physical stuff, we need to ensure that it is based on biomechanics. We're not using pain compliance. We're not hurting people. We're using leverage. We're generating momentum. We're using balance displacement, and it's all objective-oriented movement. We have a simple goal we're moving towards, whether it's a bed, a room, or assisting to a prone position. So what we like to tell our people is lead with your heart, listen with your ears, and be ready when your heart goes boom. And I'd love to, I can speak for hours about this, but I think I've used up my time here. So thank you so much for being gracious with letting me chat for a bit. And I'll turn it over to Melissa. Thank you for bearing with me.
Thanks, Matt. So, as I heard Laura and Matt speak, one of the things I can say to all of you is that there are some definite threads that you're going to hear from all of us. And so that means, from the UK to Canada to the US, we figured a few things out that we know we have to integrate into workplace violence. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our approach to workplace violence and what that looks like. And you're going to see kind of all the things here that apply to it. Due to time, I'm just going to kind of hit some of the heavy marks. I really want to share, I just came to Children's in Dallas 4 weeks ago, so I'm excited about this opportunity, but did a lot of groundwork at Inspira Health in South Jersey and with that amazing team, so shout out to them. And what we saw over the 4 years I was there was a decrease in overall assault on staff rate of 5.56%. And probably one of the two of the top moments for me there was this last year, the employee engagement scores went up 4 points in the area where staff feel safe at work. And this was also the first year that the health professionals and allied employees, so the nurses union, did not have their safety on as a bargaining negotiation, because we've done so much work to get to that point. So again, due to time constraints, I'm going to really hit some of the high marks that I just want to make sure that you're including in a workplace violence program. Again, we will share these slides with you all. And if you ever want some more information, I love sharing everything we have and giving it to you so that we can all stop workplace violence. So I'm going to just tell you, as a director of workplace violence, one of the things I'm going to tell all of you is seek out with your leadership to get somebody as a dedicated leader to oversee that workplace violence program. It is so important that one person is really kind of heading it up and doesn't have a million other responsibilities if you really want to make a difference. We also have workplace violence staff, and all of those staff members had various backgrounds in social work, psychology, human services, case management, all of the human service aspects. They became a part of that plan of care team and provided insight and behavioral plans, safety contracts, and provided that support to staff who were caring for a patient with a history of violence. The specialist partnered with the broader healthcare team to lead an interdisciplinary approach that identified workplace violence events, supported ongoing education. They work closely with the clinical teams by rounding on the floors every day, actively participating in the safety huddles that change a shift. Those interactions created that opportunity to identify potential concerns early on, and when needed, they work together to collaborate in developing a safety plan. It got to the point where, clinical staff would not wait for that violent event. They would call first thing in the morning and say, look, the patient's been agitated all night. Really, could you come up here and support us, and let's see what we can do. So again, having that dedicated staff, at least a leader, and then start working on adding staff to your program. For me, one of the biggest things is successful staff participation. Listen, I continue to tell people the workplace violence program is not mine. Right? It's not mine, it's the staff's, and I want them to know that. I'm just here trying to help guide with the map. I really want to create a culture of safety through active presence, and then create a sense of trust and credibility with the staff. Because if you say you have a workplace violence program and yet they don't see the results or see you present in those moments, you really kind of lose that credibility in your program. We wanted the staff to have access to the WPV staff at all times and offer recommendations and suggestions without fear of any retaliation. So we're very open and transparent. I'm going to kind of skip through some of these, but one of the big ones for us, again, when you talk about that collaborative piece, the workplace violence staff participated in the shared interest groups, the local union meetings, the shared governance groups, the practice council, magnet committees, wherever we could fit in, we went, so that we could make sure they understood what we were doing. Again, owned by the staff. We really are just driving it. We want their buy-in. We had a breakdown of how we did our workplace violence committee. There's a steering committee, kind of that leadership representation. And then we had a workplace violence, like a working committee. It was interdisciplinary with representatives from every department across the organization. It was not top heavy. We wanted it to be 50% of direct line staff. And when I say direct line staff, I do not mean just clinical. We made sure we had representation from EVS, food services, our offsite or ambulatory offices. We wanted to make sure there was representation of every staff person because this was their program, not ours. Just want to touch on that clinical partnership and how important that is to any successful workplace violence program. Just like Laura said, you have to understand the clinical drivers that may be affecting the behavior of that patient. What's their trauma level? What happened to them in the past? How do we peel back the layers of that person and say, how did they get here and why are they behaving this way? And what can I do to empathetically approach this to get the result I'm looking for and not a consequence that I did not want? The workplace violence specialist and the clinical team, again, worked together to develop a safe plan for the patient and the staff that ensured minimum impact for everyone involved. We always were working on building that trust and collaborative relationships. And when I say workplace violence, clinical, and the patient, we often included that patient in that safety plan and said, look, what do you think? What would you like us to have on this piece of paper? Because oftentimes what we found was there was something deep underneath their behaviors because they felt like somebody mistreated them or talked to them out of sorts. Again, but for time, I'm just going to kind of skim through these. So again, you heard this a little bit earlier. Training cannot be once a year and should not be one size fits all. We created a centralized training request calendar so that department leadership could request workplace violence training. And when we say training, we really kind of developed it depending on what kind of time frame they had. So they might do a de-escalation training because it was mandatory once a year, but we would go to a safety huddle and maybe do a 10-minute refresher on one of the physical interventions. Or maybe we would do, one of the verbal de-escalations and do a role play. So again, make sure that you don't just do training once a year. I love what Matt said, right? It's insufficient. For me, because I'm a sports girl and I coached softball, both of my girls, and I said they'll never get good at batting unless they were doing it every day, and it became the muscle memory. And it's the same thing with any physical intervention program that you're implementing. It cannot just be one 8-hour de-escalation physical intervention class, and you expect them to walk out and be able to successfully do that out on a floor in the toughest moments. Again, you guys are going to get the slides. I certainly can talk to any of you at any point, but I want to give some time for question and answers. I just want to make sure we hit really quick things. Exactly what Laura said. You're going to see the picture up in the corner of one of my favorite things that we did at Spira. It's important that you educate staff to report the incidents of workplace violence and do the post-incident debriefings. But really, you need to look at what your response looks like. What are you doing after an event? What are you doing to support the staff? How are you preventing that secondary trauma and that turnover? We really did a lot of work on this. We had our animal-assisted wellness with crisis response canines, John Hunt and his crew, Axel and Ivan and Andrea. They were all wonderful. They would come after an event and see the staff, and the staff continue to say, I needed this. This was the best thing that happened to me today. I don't want a pizza party. I would like Axel to come see me. And it became so successful that the staff would actually reach out to us and say, do you think you could bring the dogs? And so again, we wanted to put things in place that worked. Schwartz rounds, peer support, critical incident stress management. So make sure that you're not just doing the prevention stuff and the response things. It's so important that you really look at this and have some kind of recovery. Again, I'll share anything, anybody who ever wants anything, reach out to me. I'd be glad to share this. This is a worksite analysis that I use, and you have used it all 3 hospital systems. I've implemented this. It really just kind of makes sure that no matter if you're DNV, Joint Commission, that you're really looking at your workplace violence program and saying, do we have this? And where can I check the box? And if we don't have this, let me put some guidelines and a time frame. So it really just makes sure from OSHA, Joint Commission, DNV, all of them, that you have this comprehensive program that will meet any accreditation standard. again, your SVAs, which drive. It's important that you have policy and procedure. If you don't have a workplace violence prevention plan, just like you have a security management plan, then you're failing your workplace violence program, right? Because your workplace violence prevention plan is often like a business plan. It's your blueprint. You need to know, where am I starting? What am I looking at? What does the crime data in my area look like? What are my initiatives going to be? And what am I going to tackle this year? So with that, I know we are at time. I want to just kind of, I'm going to kind of stop there and go forward just to questions and open the floor up. Make sure we don't have any questions in the question and answer or in the chat. I was kind of looking through as everybody else was presenting. Any question? Laura, Matt, did you guys see any questions in the chat that we need to respond to?
No, didn't see anything, Melissa.
Okay. Just a couple of reminders. Today's recording will be posted later, so you can come back and you can watch it. We did have that talk earlier with Heather. We are more than willing to share the slides with all of you, especially because we kind of sped through some of it. So we want to make sure that you get the information. And then, lastly, please reach out to us if you have any questions. I think the theme of today was we all are doing something a little bit different, no matter which country you heard from, right? We're all doing something a little bit different, but there's some common threads through there. And if all three of us are doing it in their common threads, I might say, okay, that may be something, if we don't have that, we need to look into. So again, take that time and really evaluate your program. We're all here to support you. Everybody in IHSS is here to support you. And so please reach out to any of your local chapters, any member. We'd be more than happy to support you in making sure that you have everything you need to prevent workplace violence. And again, thank you today for our sponsors. Andrea, thank you guys so much for this, and happy Healthcare and Safety Security Week to everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.